Yeah, just turn it on.
Yeah, all right. You're on. You've been on.
My name is Nelson Ford. I've worked at the Gunsmith for 45 years this summer. And I'd like to talk about the 1911, its attributes, and my thoughts about it. First thing is, everybody should know it's John Browning's design. 2.5 pounds of love. Doesn't want to sit on most pudgy guys' hips today. Shoulder holsters would probably work better because of the weight. Simplicity in design is not really the total picture. The total picture is that there's so much meat across the top of this slide that you can put on all kinds of things. The Wayne Novak sight with the different Wayne Novaks, red, green fiber optics, white dot. I like the gold bead. You can put on that beautiful Bomar adjustable made by Ken sight today, or you can put on those ridiculous optics for those that are very weak at heart. But the gun has so many attributes, you really can't. This is 1919. That's how long they've been around, and this is to keep it from coming out of your holster and hitting the ground when you're riding your horse. This is to keep it on your hip or keep it on your horse. Anyway, there's so many things. It's hard to talk about them all at once. It would take forever. But the grip safety that they put on there, now you can put on these protective, like ducktail grip safeties. Brown's probably the best, which requires a commander hammer or a really shortened hammer. This is the flattened mainspring housing. You put an arch, semi-arch, mainspring housing, the S&A with the mag well. People checker them. They have a long and short triggers. You can adjust the trigger pulls if you're any good, and you have the right parts. You can adjust the trigger pulls to any different weight. The slides and the frames are metal, so you can actually peen them and work them and make them tight so they work well. And John Browning put a bushing on here, so you can taper the barrel out, put on a tight bushing, and it'll relieve itself as the slide goes back, as the barrel goes down. And you can have all the accuracy you want. You have a link in there to raise or lower the barrel. It's almost a dream come true. And that's why here's the design. I don't have time to discuss it all in this particular video, but it started in 1886 with John Browning firing a rim cartridge out of an automatic in 1886 in the basement of his mother's home. And it had 2 links at first, and now there's a 1 link, and the slide used to come off the back, now it comes off the front. But this is the perfected model. This is God's own, and it has so many different features. This is a fun one. You're going to like this. You're going to love this. The spring cap, you turn the bushing and it comes out. Should clear the firearm. The spring cap, its dimension is the same as a 45 HCP round. And so if it gets away from you and flies away, all you have to do is grab an empty off the ground. Grab an empty, put it over the spring, and push it down on there. Now, it won't capture the bushing permanently, but it will capture the bushing temporarily. You can continue firing. If you're a hobbyist with a grinder in your garage, you just grind on the rim, and that'll capture the bushing, and you have a replacement for your end cap. I could go on forever, and I'm not sure where to start or finish, but I can tell you this gun is not loved for simple reasons. I've spent my entire life, I started working on these when I was 23 years old professionally, and I'm going to be 70 next year. And the magic never ends. It never ends. And I want to do more videos and elaborate on feed systems, trigger systems, and how to make them work right. There's a lot to know. Your hammer hooks, the height. How many people know that hammer hooks should be 23 thousandths? Gold cups, they have been 18 thousandths, but the sears need to be right. The Colt sears are different than any other sears, and the disconnect needs to be 1350 in overall height. You know, all these little tricks. The Colt sear spring is really better than any of the other sear springs that are available or come with other guns. They're tempered right. But you need to cut the left side of the sear leaf away so it doesn't rub against the frame. And you got to watch for the hammer strut that it doesn't rub the disconnect leaf when it's operating. There's so many little things. You don't want the disconnect lobe to stick out into the magazine well, because that'll cause problems. And I'll cover that in videos to come, because I've spent my whole life inside these things and I want to share it with you. Thanks. We'll see each other again.
So what is that?
It's a 1919.
Well, specifically that one in particular. What's the history of that? That one.
Well, you can tell because there's no cutaway here that it was made before 1924. And it's got this black slide. And this slide, the black slides represent a particular genre of these guns. The number of diamonds between the checkering things, between the diamonds, there's one's 13, one's 17. The number of checkering on the, where's my glasses? On the magazine release. I think this is 8 per, and then they go down to 6, and then to 4, and then there's straight lines. The long trigger is present in the 1919, and the flat mainspring housing. The grip safety is shorter, and you have the wide hammer spur on the early models. The fine checkering. This particular model says Augusta Arsenal, which means it was reconditioned and sent back out for World War II. This is a dude right here.
So it started as a World War I era,
and it was
pre-World War II, and then it was
reissued for World War II. But they're God's own. There's a half-dip magazine. They dipped them to harden the lips, and that's why you have 2 different colors here. And then this one's not marked, but most of the World War II ones are all marked with a letter or number that tells you who manufactured them. But these are God's own, man. These are precious, and it's just crazy that, you know, here we are. How many years later? I think this is from the 80s, and this Rogers worked on this gun. I worked on this gun. Checkered. It's got a AWC suppressor with the Nexus system, which was new at the time. It moves independently of the suppressor.
A Nielsen device.
A checkering, front checkering. This line across the side of the slide actually named as the French cut. Of course, it's got Wayne Novak sights and Rogers flatten and seri. A wonderful Brown's beaver tail. The mainspring housing I checkered as well. I like the simplicity of the simply open magazine well with all the gimmicks. It's got a perfect trigger pull, probably 3.5, 4 pounds with a light, and so she's part of God's own right there. This one has things I don't necessarily think are necessary: night sights and a laser device. But it's God's own 100 years later.
Kind of a broad spectrum.
Yes, and they're just wonderful. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And we'd like to get into the actions what makes them feed, breech face dimensions, extractor tension, the gap between the barrel and the ramp, and then also dimensions on the hammer, 22,000 hooks, a 1305 disconnect, properly cut sears. I use a Tommy Wilson jig. Colt sear springs are the market. They are the piece to have, and there's ways to adjust them and make them work and make everyone happy.